Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of TechteamGB. Today we're checking out the Gigabyte X99 Gaming 5. Roll the intro! Alright guys, so first off we're just going to take a look at what comes in the box. You get 6 braided SATA cables, which is a really nice high quality touch over the standard SATA cables that you get with most motherboards. You also get 3 crossfire cables, 2 3-way SLI bridges with different spacings and a 4-way SLI bridge. There's also a driver's DVD and a manual included, and a dual 4-pin to 8-pin adapter. For the drivers though, I definitely recommend going onto Gigabyte's website and get the most up-to-date drivers, so everything works completely fine. So now just taking a look along the right hand side of the board, you can see you have your standard 24-pin connector, 10 SATA 6 gigabit per second ports, and a single SATA Express port capable of up to 10 gigabits per second. One thing to note is that the SATA Express port cannot be used in conjunction with the M.2 SATA Express port installed on the board. The board also has a really sweet looking chipset with built-in LEDs that we'll definitely be taking a look at in a bit more depth later. Along the bottom of the board you can see you have a single Molex connector for giving extra power to the PCI lanes. This is a really nice placement for this port, as a lot of the boards put them slap bang in the middle, which makes them pretty much useless, so it's great they actually put it in a useful place. There's also 2 PWM fan headers, 2 USB 2 connectors and a single USB 3 connector, and you also have your standard front I/O ports. Now taking a look at what really makes this board is the awesome onboard sound card. This is made up of a few components, the most important of which is the Creative Soundcore 3D chip, which sounds pretty sweet even to my fairly novice ears. The sound card also offers different capacitor settings, which is changeable through the onboard switch, and there's also an interchangeable op amp, so you can pretty much customise the sound signature until your heart is content. Now, as I briefly mentioned earlier, the board also has an M.2 10 gigabit per second port and an M.2 Wi-Fi port, meaning you can create a crazy powerful system in a fairly small form factor, since it pretty much eliminates the need for a separate SSD. Now, one of the main reasons that you might be looking to go X99 is for quad SLI setups. This board definitely has you covered, since it has 4 X16 slots and 3 X1 slots. One thing though to take note of is if you run 4 cards, they'll be running at X8, X8, X16, X8, and if you run 3 cards, they'll be running at X16, X16, X8. Another unique feature of X99 is the quad channel DDR4. This board has 8 DIMM slots, which will allow you to install an absolutely massive amount of memory, although at the time of filming, modules only really go up to around about 8 gigs, but be prepared to pay a premium price for those, as you'll probably have to sell a kidney to buy them. As you probably well know by now, X99 gives support for the 2011-3 socket, with chips ranging from £250 all the way up to £850 and up to 8 cores and 16 threads, which really makes any X99 board a real workhorse, so to speak. Now, an important part of finding the right motherboard for some people is the amount of fan headers on it. This board has 5, one on the left of the left DDR4 modules, 2 down the bottom and 2 on the right of the CPU socket, one being for the fan CPU. One of the really unique features of this board is the I/O shield, and yes, you heard me correctly, the I/O shield. It plugs into the motherboard, which allows you to illuminate the rear I/O and also change some settings that we'll take a look at in a moment. Speaking of rear I/O, the board has a mount for a dual antenna, 7.1 audio including optical out, a killer Ethernet port which allows you to prioritise network traffic, 6 USB 3.0 ports, 4 USB 2.0 ports, and a PS2 keyboard and mouse port. Now, the coolest feature of the board has got to be the software, the main one of which is the Gigabyte App Center, which allows users to perform live updates on drivers as well as change lighting settings. In the lighting settings there are a few options: off, still mode, which keeps the lights on continuously, beat mode, which beats the lights to your music, and pulse mode. There's also a setting which allows users to turn on and off the lighting on the rear I/O. Now, one of the things that I really disliked was the colours. The rear I/O is blue and the rest of the board is red. I'm not sure what Gigabyte were thinking here, Maybe in the future, if they implemented something like an RGB lighting system where users could define their own colours, so they could actually make a build that suits them rather than having clashing colours like you do at the moment. But at least for now, I'd probably leave the rear I/O off, as it pretty much spoils the look of the build, and would only really turn it on to make the rear I/O visible if I was, say, plugging in a keyboard or mouse. Now, as you can see, I also tried to perform a live driver update, although I wasn't actually connected to the internet. So clearly that wouldn't work, but I tested it later on and it seemed to work just fine. Picked up one driver that was out of date and updated it without any issues, so that's awesome. Definitely helps with keeping all your drivers up to date, because you don't have to go to their sites and download them manually and go through all that major kerfuffle. So it's a really cool feature and it's really well implemented. In the App Center there's a little cog logo that you can click, and that gives you access to a few different preferences of which you can change. The first of which is language. You can also change color scheme, and there's the update schedule, so you can actually get it to update manually. There's also an auto time sync, auto BIOS language, and always run on reboot mode. And one thing that I really like about this board is the BIOS. There's a load of different settings you can change. There's literally just infinite different settings. The first menu is sort of like a setup guide. There's a few different simple settings you can change. It just allows you to set things like boot sequences and system time and all that sort of stuff really easily, and without having to delve into some massive menus. There's also like a little arrow button that you can click, and that will take you into the full advanced settings, which is what we're going to jump into. So in here there's just hundreds and hundreds of different settings. There's a few tabs at the top and the bottom which are frequency, memory, voltage, miscellaneous, home, and save and exit. In each tab there's actually sub-tabs, for XMP profiles, all your different CPU voltages. You can change, you can check your CPU temperatures, just change each individual voltage. You can set PWM fan speeds, just so many different things. If you can imagine it, it's probably in here, so don't worry about being any lackluster BIOS settings, because if they exist they are almost certainly in this BIOS. One other really cool feature in the BIOS is the Home tab, where you can actually create your own sub-tabs, so you can use your most frequently different change settings, such as say you wanted your DDR4 voltage and your CPU voltage and perhaps clock speed and things like that, so you can quickly go into those menus and change them without having to go through loads and loads of different sub-menus to find a specific setting that you want. So you can keep all your most used ones there, and then you can access them pretty much as quick as possible. So now we come to the point in the video where I give my final thoughts on the product itself, and in this case it was the Gigabyte X99 Gaming 5. I had to be really nitpicky to find any actual issues with the product itself, and the only one that I actually found was the mismatching colour scheme between the board and the rear I/O shield. Now this might seem like a really minor problem to some people, but considering this board is aimed at gamers, they quite often like things to be all matching, have matching accessories, matching lighting in the case and everything like that, and the fact that one's blue and one's red really just makes no sense to me, so I'm not really too sure what Gigabyte were thinking here. It could have been really easily overcome, say if they put RGB LEDs in the rear I/O shield, as well as the the chipset and along the sound card placement. So perhaps in a re-revision of this board, or their next boards that come out in the future, if they implemented maybe an RGB lighting system, that could quite easily fix the problem. So I'd like to see where they go from here, but at least for now it's a really nice feature, and it definitely makes it easier to find your I/O. Now, other than that fairly minor issue, the board itself is pretty much incredible. It's probably one of the best X99 boards that you can currently pick up at the moment. Some of the best features that I like are the killer Gigabit NIC, which allows you to change all the different settings of how your NIC works, such as prioritizing network traffic. So say you play a specific game and you want that to be prioritized, against something that you're downloading or something like that, you can prioritize that so everything should run completely smoothly. Another great feature is the audio interface. It gives you really high quality sound. It seems like a lot of companies are jumping on board with a high quality sound card, so that's great to see. They also offer things like the removable op amps. You can actually customize the sound signature to something you really like, so that's also great to see. There's a ton of SATA ports, so the possibilities are endless pretty much for the amount of drives that you can install, so that's great to see. And there was really pretty much no major faults in how the board's laid out. Like I mentioned, some companies like to put the Molex connectors or USB 3 connectors in strange places, which makes cable management quite difficult, but with this board everything seems to be laid out pretty perfectly. Even access to something like the CMOS battery is quite easily done. So now for value for money I'm going to give it a 4. It comes fairly low priced out of all of the X99 lineups, and it's probably one of the best boards out there in terms of the X99, so value for money it's going to get a 4. So for performance, I'm going to give it a 5 because I don't really see how you can particularly relate performance to a motherboard, considering they all pretty much perform, within margin of error of each other, and things like the Ethernet chipset and audio chipset perform really well. So for performance, it's going to get a 5. So for functionality, it's going to get a 5 because the board just has a ton of different ports. It's just got a massive amount of rear I/O ports. You've got your M.2 slots, tons of different SATA, loads and loads of PCI lanes, a ton of DDR4, just so many different things you can customize. The list goes on. For functionality, it's going to get a 5. So for style, it's going to get a 4. It was between a 4 and a 5. The board does look really, really gorgeous, although, the clashing between the I/O and the board itself just knocks a point off for me. As an overall TechteamGB score, I think I'm going to have to give it a 5, because I don't really feel like the rear I/O problem is, a big enough problem to take a point off the TechteamGB score, although it was enough of a problem to take it off of style. So for an overall TechteamGB score, I'm going to give it a 5 because there was really no major faults in the board. It worked flawlessly. The BIOS is so versatile and easy to customize. Tons and tons of input and output on the board. The possibilities are really endless with a board like this. So for a TechteamGB score, it's going to get a 5. So as you might know, here in TechteamGB we also like to give awards, and this board is definitely going to get the TechteamGB Gamer Approved Award because the thing looks stunning and would fit perfectly well in any gamer's system. Alright guys, so thanks for watching this episode of TechteamGB. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button. If you dislike it, hit the dislike button. While you're down there, leave us a comment so you can tell us what to improve on next time, or you can also tell us what you loved about the video so we can make sure we keep on doing it. Make sure you subscribe so you can get regular updates whenever we release a video. Also favourite the video so that you can come back to it later so it doesn't just get lost in the world of YouTube. Share it so your friends can also watch this amazing content, and we'll see you all next time. Bye!